Now it's time for today's perspective. And you think of direct cooperation between two countries, you might not necessarily think of Scotland on the one hand and Malawi on the other. But in fact, the two countries are formed with a real bond. They have a long history of international cooperation that's now come even more to the fore. Malawi has become the first country to benefit from Scottish money, which was pledged at the COP26 summit in Glasgow to be sent to poorer countries suffering from problems due to climate change. Scotland initially pledging $2 million, but another $5 million were pledged the following year from the Climate Justice Fund. Well, joining us to talk about this is Ben Wilson. He's Advocacy Manager for SCIAF, that's the Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme today. First of all, tell us a bit about the Malawi side of it. What is this money for? Why is it so desperately needed?
So Malawi is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change, not just in Africa, but across the whole world. And we've actually seen some evidence of that in recent days with Cyclone Freddy hitting, which has already killed dozens of people. It's displaced thousands, and it's really having a devastating impact on the infrastructure of an already really poor country.
Yeah, it's to do with homes, it's to do with crops as well, isn't it? I mean, I was reading a 20% decline in harvest there.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, this is one of the challenging things about climate change. It's having an impact in the long term, over the long periods, because the changing weather patterns, increasing droughts and increasing flooding. But then, of course, when you've got devastating cyclones and storms like Storm Freddy, then it's having a really terrible impact on the agriculture across the country. And this is already a country with huge issues with hunger and malnutrition, and that's only getting worse and worse as a result of climate change.
And human tragedies as well, not just with people losing their homes, also people losing their children. I mean, the waters rising has led to crocodiles even taking children from villages, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I've been getting inundated with texts from colleagues in Malawi and friends in Malawi with some really quite horrible videos of the catastrophe which is happening there, people being washed away. I mean, what you need to remember is that people are living already kind of on the brink in a lot of the rural areas in Malawi. They're living in houses which can't withstand heavy rains. They're living close to rivers and seasonal rivers that can come and wash goods. And as you say, people away. It really is a tragedy.
So you're joining us from Glasgow. Tell us what on earth you can do to try and help people in Malawi, being right up there in Glasgow.
So, as you said, Scotland and Malawi have got a strong connection, which actually dates back more than 160 years to the explorer David Livingstone, the Scottish explorer David Livingstone, who went out and mapped part of the continent of Africa, including Malawi. And since then, Scotland and Malawi have had a really strong connection. Scotland has a small portion of international aid, which it tries to focus on some partner countries, including Malawi, to really maximise the impact it can have and hopefully repay some of the debt which countries like Scotland owe for its colonial relationship, which it's had with Malawi over those 160 years that I mentioned. But thanks to some of the money from the Scottish Government, which was pledged at the COP26 conference, we, working with our sister agency Trocare, Malawi and Lilongwe, and local partners, are helping people to recover from some of the extreme weather from climate change that they've already been experiencing.
So what will the money actually go to then? Individual projects or?
Yeah, so it's going to a number of different communities across the southern region that have been hit by climate events in recent years. So Storm Freddy actually is just one of a number of extreme weather events which has happened in these parts of Malawi in recent years. In 2022, there was Storm Anna and Gombe. In 2019, Cyclone Idai in Kenneth. And that's really what we're saying, is that the increasing frequency and intensity of these storms is really making life very difficult for those communities. So this money is about going into those communities which have been affected by this extreme weather, working together with the communities to understand how we can help them to build back and to build back better and to recover from the damages which they've experienced as a result of these extreme weather events.
It sounds like a wonderful scheme. I mean, critics might say what is happening here, though, is a bit of a drop in the ocean. It's not going to make a real huge impact worldwide, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I had the privilege of going out to visit some of these projects in January, and what I saw was that with a relatively small amount of money, we're having a tremendous impact through our local partners on the lives of a very large number of people. But as you say, it's a drop in the ocean. You know, we're only able to work in a few villages within Malawi, and of course, there's many countries across the region and across the world who are also suffering these impacts of climate change. But what gives me hope is that actually this Scottish commitment to the issue of loss and damage made at COP26 they were really kind of one of the first movers on this issue, and that has inspired more countries to come on board. And then at COP27 in Egypt, we saw a global agreement to establish a fund for loss and damage as a result of climate change. The talks about what that fund will look like and how it will be monetized are happening right now, and we hope that that fund can learn the lessons from these small examples from Scotland, so that a great many more people across the world can also receive help like this.
Yeah, and presumably as the world carries on and, you know, the way things are going, we're inevitably going to see more and more climate change issues cropping up. A lot more money is going to be needed as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think it's really important to recognise that acting on climate change, you can say there's really three ways to act on climate change. You know, we need firstly to reduce our emissions as quickly as possible, and that's going to require investment. We also need to invest as much as possible in adaptation to change. This is all over the world, in countries like Scotland as well as countries like Malawi, to adapt to the climate change we already know is going to happen. But then crucially, we also need the money to help people once they've already been impacted by climate change. That's what loss and damage is. And as you say, yeah, all of this requires huge investment. And yet what we would say is actually the scale of investment required for inaction is even higher. You know, we're staring in the face of a global catastrophe here. And in countries like Malawi, they're already seeing what that global catastrophe looks like. So actually, in the long term, investment in challenging climate change is a good investment, and it's something we need to do.
So just to round up, I mean, how proud does it make you that, you know, you're able to play, even if it is just a small part in being able to try and combat this? And as you say, hopefully what you're doing will grow into something much bigger in the future.
Yeah, I think the people of Scotland can be incredibly proud of this, but actually a lot of the achievements which have been made in this area to challenge climate change, I really take a lot of pride in knowing and working closely with our partners in Malawi, who have really been raising these issues for a very long time at the local level, but also taking it to those big global climate conferences and arguing on behalf of the communities that they know are already experiencing these impacts of climate change. And so I've got great pride in working closely with them, and hopefully by following the leadership of those people and those communities that we can really start to find some solutions to this crisis.
Ben Wilson, good to talk to you on the programme today. Thanks very much for joining us. That's Ben Wilson from SCIAF, the Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund. Thanks very much.